Welcome back to Heart of Alaska. Today we're going to be doing some moose and pork Texas hot links. We start off with a pork shoulder that's completely untrimmed and a moose brisket. The first thing that we have to do is cut the meat down to manageable sizes for the grinder. Now, these don't have to be absolutely perfect or even cuts, because all we're going to be doing is putting them into the grinder. So as long as they can fit into there, that's the entire point and purpose. Now, you can use different cuts of meat or even different types of meat. It doesn't necessarily have to be moose or even pork, but that happened to be what we had in the household, and it sounded kind of good, and we figured we'd give it a try. It's the first time we've tried to put moose into one of these Texas hot links, and I'll tell you, it turned out really good in the end. Now, it is a little bit easier if you make sure that your meat is partially frozen while you're cutting it. As you can see with this pork shoulder, it makes it a little bit harder to cut into, but by the same token, you end up with more even cubes, and when you go to put them into the grinder, it doesn't get all gummed up on you if your meat is really cold. There's a couple of things that we do to verify that that's not going to happen. So one is working with a completely frozen piece of meat, which, as you can see here, thank goodness we have a knife that's big enough to cut into that. But the other thing is that when you do see the grinder, you're going to see that there is a cold sleeve on it. Basically, that's been in the freezer this entire time in preparation of the grind. And if you don't have that cold sleeve or some really cold meat going into it, like I said, it will gum it up and it slows down the entire process. And this is your pork and moose that we're going to be putting into these Texas hot links. Now you see the black wrap down on the front of the grinder. Again, that just came out of the freezer. And we start to really carefully feed that meat down into there. Now watch your fingers, it's better to use the pusher here. And make sure that you're feeding in a mixture of the moose and the pork at the same time. You don't want to get too much of one and not enough of the other. It's really important to have everything as even as you can when it comes to seasonings, when it comes to different kinds of meat in there. And I know that a lot of people say that you don't ever want to watch sausage being made, but personally I kind of enjoy it. It looks really weird, especially when you fast forward it a little bit. But there's nothing wrong with it, and I'd rather see it being made and know exactly what's in my food. Now we're going to get to the seasonings. We're looking at salt, black pepper, cayenne, chili flake, jalapeno powder, sugar, garlic powder, onion powder, and mustard seeds. Now it really depends on what meats you use and what the proportion is that you want of those spices. In our case, we happen to have a really mild moose. It was milder than our beef normally is, so we had to back off on some of the spices. We didn't have to have as much at all. You put them all on that ground up meat, and then you put a little bit of water in there on top of it. Try to spread that as evenly across there as you can. You want to make sure that you have an opportunity to mix all those in as well as you can. And after you add that little bit of water, it is time to get your hands dirty. Now, we kind of prefer to use gloves for this portion, because as you'll see in a second, it gets really sticky really quick. Now, this is the first portion of the mix. It takes quite a while, but you can tell when we get into this next section here that it's starting to come together. When you start in there, everything's kind of flaking apart and it's a pain. But as you get really into the mixing of it, it comes together more and more. And here's after a little while longer. It's kind of a good arm workout. And you'll know that it's ready if you put a bit of it on your hand. I'll show you this. And then you turn your hand upside down and it doesn't go anywhere. That is ready. Now it's time for stuffing. So what we're doing is packing that down into the stuffer to make sure that we get all the air out of the mix. This is really important to keep the quality of your hot links nice and steady. Then we start cranking this down. Now, as you can see, in this instance we're using collagen casings. We really don't prefer to use those. We prefer the natural casings. Oh yeah, you want to tie off that end a bit because otherwise it gets really messy really fast. But we prefer to use the natural casings. They take a little more preparation, but overall it ends up with a better product on the other side. And when you start feeding this through, you just need to apply even pressure so that you fill up that casing, but yet you don't let it burst. It's one of those things you kind of learn the feel of after a while. It's not something anybody knows right up front. And then as you're doing this, you start to get this long line, so you start turning it. And that's how you see those big wheels of sausage formed. Sometimes we end up with really huge wheels in our kitchen. Then when you're done, then you twist it into links. And you know, some people go to the trouble of measuring each one just to verify that they're all the same size, but in this case we were just making it for a friend and family, and really we weren't all that worried about it as long as the end product ended up tasting really good. So some were bigger, some were smaller. It didn't really matter to any of us. Alright, these are ready to go on the smoker. Now what we did is we had some applewood smoke on this, and they ended up being smoked for about 1 hour, or until the internal temperature reaches about 140 degrees, and you'll want to temp them to make sure it gets up to that. And don't forget to turn them. You don't want them only cooking on the one side. About this time, the whole neighborhood is smelling these and starting to kind of wander our direction, asking what the heck it is that we've got on the grill this time. Kind of known around here for that. Hopefully we didn't smoke them out too bad this time. And here we are. It was amazing. If you like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next time.